Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ascent Novel Prizes podcast, Conversations on Craft, where we dive into the messy, magical world of writing and we demystify the publishing process. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Pim Wangtechawat, author of The Moon Represents My Heart and I Dream of You, which is due to be published in March 2026. Pim is a graduate of Edinburgh Napier University, where she gained a distinction in her Masters in Creative Writing, and her short stories, poems and articles have been widely published. Pim, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So nice to be here. I was gonna say welcome too, and I was like, what?
You can co-host, that's fine. I'll promote you to co-hoster.
Oh God.
So we're going to start today with some quick fire questions.
Yes.
First of all, Pim, pen or laptop?
This is a cop-out, but I'm gonna say both.
I like it. Are you a pantser or planner? And you may prefer the phrase gardener or architect from J.R.R. Martin.
Yes, I always use those terms. I'm definitely a planner. I'm an architect.
There's something a bit undignified about the phrase pantser, isn't there?
Yeah.
And especially because in the UK it means something different from America. Like pants is not a good word to be describing yourself with.
Yeah, gardener.
Yes, yeah, I'm a gardener. Your favourite genre?
Ooh, that's hard. Because I do think I read a lot of stuff. I would say maybe historical fiction.
A book you wish that you had written?
Oh, any of the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, any one of them. Even like his short stories, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, his Dunk and Egg short stories, any one of those. If I've written any one of those out, yeah.
Reading the opening to his first book, you know, where the White Walkers first come out. And I think, how does he build this tension? What does he do? I just love it. It's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I know you're a big movie watcher, so your favourite book to TV or movie adaptation?
Ooh. One of my favorites is Atonement. The Joe Wright movie. I think Joe Wright directed movie with Keira Knightley and James McAvoy. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I read the book as well. I love the book, but I just love how it's adapted. Just the cinematography, the Dunkirk sequence. Just, I think it's so beautifully done.
It was the green dress for me, Pim.
Ah, the green dress.
Kira's green drapery.
Yes.
And
that's like one of the amazing things about adaptations. You can really, like, I don't think the green dress is in the book. I think it's just enhanced by the movie. So I think I love that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And finally, what is the weirdest book idea you've ever had?
Oh, I don't know if it's weird, but I don't know if this one is weird, but it's definitely a bit out there. I feel like not many people. I don't think there's a book about this. So I hope no one steals this idea. Since I might return to it one day. It's basically,
perhaps don't say if it's a guarded secret.
No, it's not really a guarded secret, but it's football related. I thought it'd be cool to write something about transfer deadline day in football and like fan obsession and stuff. Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to steal that. I don't even know if I'm going to write it one day, but that's like one of the weirdest, most out there ideas I've had for a book.
Yeah, I never expected that answer, Pim.
Yes.
So we're now going to dig deep into your process as a writer. Yeah. And I have read The Moon Represents My Heart. I'll just get back onto shots. And your next book, I Dreamed of You, is due out March 2026. For those watching in the future, buy it now. It's available to you. So starting at the very, very beginning, what happens when you get an idea for a book?
Oh, that's a great question. My ideas don't really start with an idea or a premise. It's usually mostly themes or questions. Like, for example, with The Moon Represents My Heart, my idea starts with a question, like, what do I do? How do I handle my past and the losses I've experienced in life? How do I reckon with those things, but also find a way to move forward with hope and positivity? So usually it starts with questions like this or themes I want to explore. So once I have that, I spent time letting it marinate for a bit, and then I usually do a lot of free writing. I just journal, just write down my thoughts, or I just read a lot of books or and watch a lot of movies that are related to those themes, and sort of kind of try to build a story that would allow me to explore these questions or these ideas or these themes most like. So yeah, so it usually starts with a question.
And how long does that process take? Is it something that you kind of carry over several years, or are they questions that you've always had?
I feel like most of them are questions I've always had, like questions that are in the back of my mind, things that I'm fascinated by or things that I'm obsessed with. I think it depends on, I think every book is different. It takes, like for the first book, it took me, I think, just under a year. No, I think a year and a bit to finish it. So the process of marinating, like letting the ideas marinate and researching and doing all of that was just a few months. While my second book was like so much longer. And for my third book, the one that I'm working on now, it was, I think, longer than my first book, but definitely shorter than my second book. So I think it depends. It depends on the book, depends on the story. But yeah, it's definitely not like a clear-cut answer.
You've had this period of researching and collecting and thinking
Hmm.
about themes and questions. What happens next?
Then, like I said, I start shaping the story. I start thinking, okay, what kind of story would help me explore all these themes, or what kind of stories would help me find an answer to the questions I have. Once I have that premise, I start building up the characters, what kind of characters I want to have in this story, what kind of characters, what kind of arcs are they going to go on. And then I start mapping out, like I said, the purpose for this book. What am I trying to say with this book? What do I want my readers to experience from reading this book? And then I basically do breakdown of all the main characters. Who are they? What are their backgrounds? What are their likes, dislikes? Basically just expand on them as much as I can, make them real people. And then I kind of determine the journey they're going to go on within the book, like the point where they're starting with and the point where they end. And then I do a full chapter outline of what's going to happen in the book from start to finish. And then I start writing.
Fantastic. So a lot of
So
pre-work.
yes, I'm definitely a planner.
Can I take you back to when you're thinking of your character arcs? How do you construct your character arcs? Do you think that you need different character arcs in the book? What does that look like for you when you're thinking of the journey each character goes on?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I think it's a mixture of two things. I think the first thing is that I do think that many of the characters are based on myself or based on people I know or journeys that I've seen happen in real life. So most of them aren't very, I don't know what the right word is. The character arcs aren't very calculated. I don't know if that's the right word. I didn't put them into the story to kind of achieve some sort of literary function or some sort of novelistic function. They're mostly reflecting the journeys that I've seen in real life because
Mhm.
I want to keep the heart of the book as realistic as possible, if that's the right word, as real as possible. So I think that's one aspect of it. And the second part of it is that, like I said, it goes back to the purpose of the book. What am I trying to achieve with this book? And do these character arcs kind of feed into that purpose? So it's mostly a mixture of these two.
So are you referring back to your question? So, for example, in The Moon Represents My Heart, what was the theme and main core question? And how did you decide what to include and what not to
Mm.
include?
So my main purpose, like my main question for The Moon Represents My Heart was, how do we reckon with our past, with our history, and move forward into the future with hope and positivity? So it's all about dealing with grief, dealing with loss. How do we face that, but also figure out a way to not dwell in it? So if you read the book, you'll see that most of the characters' journeys in the book, especially Tommy and Eva, the kids, it's about how they confront the grief about their parents' disappearance, their parents' quote unquote deaths. So their journeys are all about that. And that reflects basically the main purpose of the book. And by extension, that also means that they're also reckoning with their relationship with their parents as well. So so that's why I have their journeys to be those journeys. To basically it goes with the purpose of the book. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that's what I love about your writing, that it feels so character driven and the characters' motivations are at the heart of it, although I still need therapy over Tommy, Pim.
Oh God, I feel like I've heard so many people have said that. I do think that he's definitely, I don't know the right word is. I think a friend read the book and said he's annoying. But yeah, I definitely think you need a lot of patience with him. But I do think that he's based on a lot of people I know, I think, and based on a lot of people who have struggled with those, like with similar experiences or with similar issues in their lives. So I always say that I'm not a very imaginative writer. I'm not a very like plot driven writer. I feel like my writing is quite, I don't know what is vibesy. I think my strength is like characters and atmosphere. So I do think a lot of my stories are quite character driven. Yeah.
And in terms of characterization, do you have any advice for writers as to how they can develop characters and make sure they've got the depth that your characters have?
I feel like one of those one exercise that I use a lot, especially in writing workshops, is basically just to expand on your character as if they're real people. Like think about stuff that might not be included in the book. Like for example, an exercise I always have writers do is basically just to answer questions about your character. Like what is their like even like ordinary mundane questions, stuff like what is your favorite song, what is their favorite color, what is their what is their happiest memories, what is their, like for example, what is their faith, do they believe in anything, what is their sleeping habits, just like little details that make someone a person, just little like stuff like that. So I always one of my tips is just to write down as much as I can about a character, no matter how small the detail.
Is it hard for you to leave them, when you finish a book?
Oh, no. I know there are some writers who are like, oh, I really like grieve letting go of these characters and blah, blah. And I'm like, no. For me, it's always very easy for me to get to the end, like finish writing a book, and I'm like, yes, it's done. I can leave them all behind. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because I don't. Yeah,
Because writing's hard work.
Yes, yes. I always say that my favorite process of writing is actually the research portion, the pre-writing portion, and then the writing itself. Sometimes when it's not flowing and you sort of still have to get through it, it requires a lot of discipline. So sometimes I love having written more than writing itself.
Yeah, there's that famous quote, I'm going to misquote it, but you're a writer when writing is harder for you than everyone else.
But yeah, I don't miss my characters. I feel like, okay, once they're done, I'm like, yay, they're done.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for writers who are stuck, who are struggling to find their way out of maybe writer's block or just issues with their novel?
I think that happens with everyone. Like with my second book, I was really stuck at different points. It was so hard writing my second book. And what really helped for me are several things. I think sometimes you just need some space from it. Just like step away for a little bit, do other things that's not writing related. Sometimes you need to also go out and experience life. I do think like sometimes for me personally, sometimes certain areas of the book or certain parts of the book are stuck more. It's because it's an emotional stuck. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not very especially if you're writing something that's so personal to you. It might
Mm.
be your own, just something you need to deal with or reckon with in your own personal life. And sometimes you have to go out and kind of deal with that. I think that's one thing that I've found. Another thing is that sometimes I need to go somewhere else. I need to take myself out of my usual environment and just go somewhere else entirely. Just I think that helps with maybe it's a mental thing, maybe it's I think removing yourself to a different location entirely can also help. And yeah, reading helps, like consuming other people's works for inspiration, watching movies, just hang out with friends sometimes too, just like talking about things. Or sometimes I do free writing. I just write like gibberish. I think there was one time I painted a picture and that helped. That
Yeah.
helped like unlock something. So I think there are so many different ways, but basically I would recommend just stepping away for a little bit and put your energy somewhere else, and sometimes it helps.
Fantastic. So, what does a typical writing session look like for you? Do you have a typical writing session? Or
Uh, I usually don't write at home. If I wake up in the morning or something, I'm a big night owl, so I sleep quite late. So I sometimes I wake up quite late. And then when I have a writing day, I always struggle with just waking up in my house and writing in my home. I have to go out and just clear my head first. If I'm living somewhere where I can walk, I usually go for a walk and then I sit down and write. In Bangkok, it's hard to walk, so sometimes I just go to a cafe and sit down and write. So for me, that's usually my writing day. I was finishing my latest draft for my third book, and I find that I've been writing at night more. So sometimes in the day, there's like always stuff happening. There's like people contacting you, wanting you to be here and there. So sometimes at night, it's where I just have the time to myself and I can really focus. So I think that's usually just how my writing days like pan out. I just wake up, I have my iced lemon tea, and then I basically try to focus and write, usually somewhere outside the house. And yeah, and usually sometimes I used to have a word count. Okay, what about like 1,000 words per day or 1,500 or something? Sometimes I have a goal or just to like finish this chapter. I usually have a goal I try to hit.
fantastic. So, returning to that drafting process,
Hmm.
you've had your collection of themes and research, and you've consumed lots of things linked to your themes. How long does a first draft take you?
Ooh, it depends. Like I said, it depends on the book. The second the moon represents my heart, I think that took a few months. That might have taken 4 or 5 months, or maybe a little bit longer. My second book, I think it might have taken like a year or like a year and a half, which is so much longer. The third book, I finished the first draft by hand, and it took
Wow.
me, and I think it took me 6, 7 weeks. It's kind of yeah, it was very fast. So I think it depends on the book itself and depends on how clear my vision is for that book, or like the like for example with The Moon Represents My Heart, I saw the beginning of the book and the end of the book. Like I had the ending from the very beginning and I knew I was always writing towards that ending. And I think that's a little bit similar to my third book as well. I always knew kind of where I wanted to end and I've always been writing towards that. But with my second book, it was shifting and changing all the time. And that made it so much harder. So I think it depends on the book and depends on where you are with that project.
Do you know why book two shifted and changed?
That's a interesting question. Loads of authors have said they really struggle with the second book. Like it's like a second book syndrome. I think musical artists have this as well. This like sophomore album. I think it's because my first book is very personal. It's about my family. It's about my experiences living in London, my dad's history. It's very personal, but I also think my second book is way more personal. It's way more personal because it's about romantic relationships, and that's such an intimate topic. And there's so much more of, with the first book, it's about a family. So there are different characters, but with this one, the second one, it's such a contained story. It's just two characters, and I feel like there's so much more of me in the book, and I feel like that's why it's so hard, because I think it's very hard to be that vulnerable, because you feel like you're putting yourself out there to be judged. And when you're writing a character and they're doing all these things, and you feel like, that's so cringe, that's so messy, and you're like, oh, you've done all of those things, you've like thought all those thoughts. I think it just makes you even more self-critical. And also, the second book is so the first book is informed by a lot of like history, like family history, actual history. So it's me writing about the story that's finished, while the second book is based on a story, an experience that's always shifting and changing. And I when I was writing it, I felt like it was informed by what was happening in my life as well. So sometimes like certain things happen, and then I would be like, oh, it changes the way I think about things, or the way I view relationships, or the way I view myself, and the way I view love, and that changes the book. I think in the very first draft, it was very dark. My agent read it. It wasn't even complete yet. My agent read it, and she was like, "Do you have do we have to have an intervention, Pim? What kind of people have you been dating?" And then, then at one point, it was supposed to like way before I first started writing it. When I was writing the first book, I always thought, okay, I want my second book to be a love story. I want it to be like sweet and romantic, like a departure from the grief and sadness of the first book. So at first, like I said, sweet, romantic, and then it became my agent has to have an intervention because like this is too. And then it became a heartbreak story, and then it became like in between. So I think that's why it was so hard, because it's so much more informed by how my life is developing in the exact moment while I'm writing it, which is why it's such a prospect of having it out in the world for people to read.
I can't wait to read it. It sounds essentially, Pim, that for your second book, you became a gardener.
Yes, a little bit at certain points, yes, but I think that's why it took so long, because at certain points I have to like combine my very limited gardening skills with my architectural, if that's the word, tendencies. I think there was certain times I have to kind of stop writing and then plan the whole thing again, which is something I've never done. Yeah, so so it's definitely a bit more.
So for book 2, I Dreamed of You, how many drafts did you do?
Oh, I think a few, like definitely way more than my first and second. To be honest, like Moon went through a lot of drafts as well, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of changes in Moon. It was more like editing certain details, or maybe adding more chapters, so some characters have more room in the book. But so I didn't feel like they were big drafts, if that makes sense. But the second one, there were a lot of changes. So I think I would say 3 or 4 big drafts. Yeah.
And at what stage do you share your work with other people? Do you share it after the vomit draft, or do you like it to get to a certain stage?
It depends. I think it depends on what I needed in that moment. Like for example, the first book, Moon. Before I queried for an agent, I asked a few of my friends to read it, and I have basically like specific questions I wanted them to answer. Like, do you think this chapter was, or do you think this character was? How did you respond to this character? Blah blah blah. Blah. So because I have very specific, like I said, specific goals that I want to hit with the book, so I wanted to make sure that those beats work before I start querying. So that's what I did with Moon. For the second book, because I was struggling so much with it, I had my agent read it even before the first draft was finished. Her feedback really helped me kind of like, okay, let's reevaluate, let's change a lot of things. So, and for the third book, I just sent it over to my agent after I finished the second draft. So I think it depends on. Usually I give it over to someone else to read it when I feel like, okay, I'm at a point where I don't know what else to add or what else to change. I've hit my own kind of capacity. Now I need someone else to help inject new ideas or new like stuff that I should include, blah blah blah. So yeah, it's usually at a point where I feel like now I've done all I can.
Yeah, so if we go back to Moon, when you sent it out to your beta readers and you got that information back, how did you know what to incorporate? How did you kind of filter in the feedback that you got?
I think it's because I had very specific questions. It wasn't just, okay, just read my book, tell me what you think. I had very specific questions of what basically before I sent it out, I read the draft again. I was like, ooh, there are certain things that I myself am not sure about. So that's why the readers came in. So their feedback either confirm or reject an argument that I already had about the book.
Can you give us a flavour of what kind of questions they were? Were they really like character specific or theme specific?
Ooh, I'm trying to think back. It's been a few years. I think one of them is probably like, oh, ooh, that's a spoiler. I think like one of the bits that are really hard, for example, the character of Tommy towards the end, his chapter towards the end when he's sort of spiraling and he's kind of like jumping through time and he's stuck in the past and stuff like that. I had a lot of trouble writing it because I wasn't sure if it came across as too much. Is it too kind of, I don't know, repetitive or too is it really, would it actually make readers emotional or would it be like, it's a bit. So I think that's one of the questions that I put in. Do you feel like you sympathize with Tommy towards the end, or do you feel like you relate to these emotions he's going through, or do you feel it's boring? Do you find the middle part to be dull? Do you feel like certain plot points are dragging? I think it's stuff like that. Yeah, so I asked very specific questions.
Yeah, so then it's quite easy to know what you want to
Yes,
implement because they
yes,
were so
yes,
specific. Yeah.
yes.
Can I take you to you've obviously studied an awful lot in terms of creative writing. What did you learn from your master's degree in creative writing?
Ooh, the biggest thing I learned from my master's creative writing degree is basically the idea of purpose. Like I studied with David Bishop, so he's the author of the Cesare. I think I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Oh God, Cesare Aldo mystery books, like historical fiction books. So he's written a lot of books, and one of the main things that we talked about in class was having a purpose. Whether you're writing a short story or whether you're writing a novel, have a clear purpose. I've always done that to an extent because before I started studying creative writing, I was a freelancer writing a lot of cultural articles, and I've always started those articles and essays with an argument. But it wasn't a very like conscious, intentional thing. It's just me. But after I studied like creative writing, it really drives home for me like the importance of having purpose, of having a clear vision for your work. I think that's like one of the biggest things that helped me. And the second thing is basically finding author friends. Like growing up in Thailand, you don't really meet a lot of people who want to grow up to be writers. Like you don't meet a lot of writers like naturally in your everyday life. It's very hard to connect with other creatives who want to write books. So for me, it was such a life-changing experience to connect and find friends from around the world who are writers as well. And that really changed my life. I think a lot of those friendships also went into the characters in my second book. So that bond of finding a group of, in my case, they were all girls, a group of girls from all around the world. And we have this creative connection and we have this special experience together living abroad. That was really, really special. And I really want to capture that bond in the second book as well. So that's in the second book, Elizabeth.
Little teaser. So for I Dreamed of You, what was your core purpose?
Why for this second book, basically I wanted to explore the relationship between love and fear or our traumas to an extent. So the second book is a lot about trying to find an answer whether love is something that's kind of, I do think some people believe this, that love is so determined or kind of divine by a higher power to an extent. Like there's like this idea of like soulmates, like people being meant to be together. Is love really that, or is love really a choice? Like how much choice do we actually have in love, or do like our outcomes in our romantic life also informed by our own traumas and our own past experiences? It's basically how much choice do we actually have in love? I think that's the question I try to ask.
One of my favourite quotes from Moon, and I can't remember which character said it, but this statement around if you'd not been there or if things had happened slightly differently, we
Oh
wouldn't have
yeah.
met. And I can't remember which character it is who basically says, no, if you're supposed to meet, love is predetermined, and so if you miss each other here, you might meet up here. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm misquoting it terribly.
Oh, it's one of my favorite sections to read out loud. It's Lily and Joshua when they first meet, the characters of the parents. I think Lily has one idea that, oh, if they're, it's like love is very much up to chance or up to luck, while Joshua thinks that it's very much predetermined or it's very much driven by this will. So I think, so it's something, I think love is such a complex and difficult thing for us to understand, to kind of make sense of. And I think that to an extent, I don't think we ever will. But I think that's why so many of us try to kind of make sense of it or to write about it in songs and books, I think this is why the second book was so hard to write, because my understanding of my belief in quote unquote love kept like changing and shifting while I was writing it as well. So I don't know if I actually came up with a good enough answer for this book, but I don't know. I hope when you guys read it, oh, you'll see.
Love story. It sounds incredible. Um, in terms of your writing process, do you have a favourite part?
Oh, definitely the research process. I know that as a writer, I should be like, the writing. I write all the time. I write from dusk, like, dawn to dusk. Like, I sweat blood and stuff like that. But no, it's the research process. I've always been very open with that. It's because it's just a process where there's so much freedom. And I love learning about things. And especially if I don't write a book unless it's an idea or a premise or themes that I'm super passionate about. So the research process is me just immersing myself in my own obsession. So that's the best part as a nerd. So yeah, so when it comes to writing itself, there's so much discipline required and so much, I don't know what word, it's trying to make everything fit. I think like that's the biggest difference between poetry and novels. Poetry sometimes it can just be an expression. Things can just flow out. But for a novel, it's like a much bigger picture that you need like a big jigsaw puzzle you need to fit together. And that requires a lot of, so for me, the planning, the research, that process is just me being a nerd. So that's my favorite part.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for, obviously, this is a time travel novel. Do you have any advice for complex novels where you've got different characters, different time periods? How did you kind of structure it and sort that all out?
Planning. I do think planning is very important if you're writing a novel with time travel, with different timelines, or if you're writing something with very high concept magic or very like, I do think like planning and world building is important. Even before I started writing Moon, I made sure I studied different time travel projects, other time travel books and TV shows and movies, and establish what the time travel rules in my universe would be like. And I made a timeline, different birth dates of the characters, and an entire timeline for this family. So I do think what helps is, I know that everyone like George R. R. Martin, the biggest fantasy writer, the one of the best we have, is a gardener and he makes things up as he goes along. But I do even him. I think he had he had to world build as well. So there has to be some sort of established world or rules that you play around with. So I think Yeah, I would say
And that
planning.
might be why, Pim, he's not done the last book yet.
Yes. Oh
Because
God.
he needs to do more planning.
But I do think after I became an author myself, I sympathize with him more. I'm like, oh, like
Pressure.
everyone, yeah, and if everyone sort of knows how your books will roughly end, it must be disheartening to kind of try to live up to that pressure, that expectation. And I also think he has so many moving parts. He has so many different characters, so many different storylines, and he has to kind of wrap all the, oh wow, like yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard.
We sympathise with poor
George.
George. So moving on to the publishing process, one of our aims at Ascent Novel Prize is to demystify the publishing process. So
Oh.
could you talk through how you got an agent, first of all?
So I basically got an agent by querying. This is a very boring answer. But I basically had a list. Basically, I researched all the literary agencies in the UK. So I went through all their websites. I made like an Excel spreadsheet. I had like my top agent choices and I had a very strong cover letter. I always say that I think that really helped me. I always say this is like as one of my biggest tips. Like I have a very strong cover letter that adheres to the agent's like guidelines. Don't divert from that, but also have a very clear pitch for your book. Like what is it about? I had comparative titles. I compared Moon to the time traveler's wife meets the Joy Luck Club. I think that really helped. And I had a very clear, like I said, purpose to the book. I had that like written down in my cover letter. Like this novel explores like a very clear like intention. So I think that really helps. So I had that very strong cover letter. I had a very strong manuscript. At that point, it was in a very good shape. And basically, I just queried two batches. I had like my top tens. I queried them first. And then after I didn't hear from them for a while, I queried the second batch, and it was a very nerve-wracking process. But luckily, two Asians expressed interest. So when one agent expressed interest first, and when one agent expressed interest, it really helped speed up the process. Because I informed other agents. I think I got like 4 full manuscript requests, and then I notified them, oh, I have an interest, and then that really helped speed up the process. And then yeah, so at the end, I was lucky enough to get to decide between two agents. So
And
yeah,
so
so it was just
did you do a call with those agents? Or
yes, I did like two. I did 2 calls with each. I did.
people talk about this call, and I think, tell us about the call, Pim.
Basically, I asked them questions like, how do they intend on selling this book? How do they intend on pitching the book? And another question that I asked them is that, what happens if we don't sell this book? I think that's a very important question to ask, because even though if you have an agent, that doesn't guarantee that a publisher would buy your book. It increases your chances by a lot, but it doesn't really guarantee anything. So what happens if we don't sell this book? What happens next? What are your next steps? Do you think we should like edit this book again? Or do you think we should start a new one? It's basically important for me to find an agent that's on board, not just for this book, but for me as a writer, or like my potential as a writer, my trajectory in the publishing industry in the long run as well. And yeah, basically I wanted to have an agent who would kind of like champion me and believe in my writing beyond this book as well. Because in I know I keep saying this, but the publishing industry can be very difficult, and sometimes stuff is very much determined by how much you sell, which is a very uh like it's not a great indicator whether your writing is great or not. So sometimes I wanted to make sure that like I had an agent who believed in me beyond just this book.
It's so hard because as writers, we're creative and often very sensitive. And when
Yes.
we enter the business, it's a business world and it can be quite cutthroat, and it is about sales and numbers. And I think those two aspects don't marry up, do they
Yes.
really? You-
Yes. Yeah, and I also think like most publishers don't have, they are run mostly by really great people who love books, who, like for example, my publisher One World, they're great with championing diverse stories, like giving marginalized authors a chance. But it's reality that sometimes our publishers don't have enough resources to back our books in the way that, for example, George R. R. Martin book would be back, or like an R.F. Kuang book would be back and stuff like that. So, but that's like a catch-22. So if you don't have the marketing resources to support a book, then the book doesn't do well. But then you're judged on whether the book does well or not. So it's, you you sometimes, whether you receive a new deal is judged on whether your previous book did well or not. But then it's just, yeah, it's difficult.
Oh, it's so hard. So can you talk us through the process of when you're out on submission with new
Mm.
books? What does that look like and what does it feel like for a writer?
It feels very nerve-wracking. It's like querying for an agent all over again, but this time you have an agent doing the pitching for you, so that helps a little bit. But it was still very nerve-wracking. And I think I put a lot on myself as well, because I feel there aren't a lot of writers from Thailand who get published abroad. So I had that in the back of my mind as well, like, oh, I need to kind of make this count. And I was in a very privileged position that I was able to write full time and finish this book full time. And I really understand how much of that a privilege that is. So I had all this pressure on myself to kind of make it worth it, if it makes sense. So it was a very nerve-wracking process. And I remember when we finally got an offer, I didn't feel like, my first emotion wasn't like happy. I wasn't like, oh my God, yes. It was relief. I was like, oh, thank God. So I do think it's definitely, I think before you enter the publishing industry, you might have this image of getting your book published is an answer to all the ills in your life, and it's like this shining moment of, which it is in certain ways. It is your childhood dream come true, but there are so many things that are tied up in it that it's not this Hollywood kind of moment the way you imagine it to be. It is great, but but
And I
it
think it's
is.
hard because when you enter any other career, you know
Yeah.
that that's the job that you're going to do.
Mm.
But when you become a writer, it's almost like, oh, at any moment it could be snatched away.
Yeah,
It's hard, isn't it?
there's so many things that are out of your control. That's why I always kind of try to be like, okay, all I can control, all I can do is focus on what I'm writing, on the story that I'm writing, whether I'm writing to my own satisfaction or not. Because if you put all of your, I don't know what the right word is, everyone wants to be validated. Like, it feels like everyone wants their work to be read and admired. I think that's a human need to an extent. But if all of your self, your identity is tied to that, then it's going to be very difficult.
That is fantastic advice, Pim. And to finish off, do you have any advice for writers who are facing rejection or just feel like the barriers to the industry are too high?
Oh, that's so hard. Because I sometimes struggle with that myself. Like, because even as a published author, you'd still get rejections. Like, you'd still face disappointments. So I think from what I've learned so far in my short career, I would say, like I said, just believe in your work and believe in, if what you're writing is what you really believe in and what you're really passionate about, and it's something that really came from you, it gives you joy, or it is something you feel like it's important, then try and believe in that. And I feel like a great story will reach the people it's meant to reach in its own way, in its own time, maybe in ways you don't expect. And if maybe just one person read it and they resonate with it, then I think that's all you can do. I think that's already means so much as a writer. I don't know if that's helpful.
That is so helpful and so inspiring. And thank you so much for your time today. If you are not watching this from the future and it's pre-March 2026, please pre-order Pim's I Dreamed of You. Pre-orders are hugely important for writers, and it has been incredible to have you here today. Pim, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.